Hey guys, I hope all is well. Thank you for joining us for the second episode of Believer versus the Unbeliever. I'm back here with my co-host Tradell.
What's up, guys?
In today's episode, I'm going to be trying to convince Tradell that the music industry is controlled by the Freemasons. Let's get right into it.
All right.
So Tradell,
Yeah.
in the last episode, we spoke about how the Freemasons basically own the United States of America. They're the ones behind this country, and they're the one that hold every position of political power, influential power. Overall, they're the reason that this country is the way that it is. But today, we're going to look at their power and influence in the music industry. So I want to ask you right now, do you believe there's any outside force like the Illuminati or the Freemasons that control the music industry? Or do you think it's just the record labels and everyone's independent?
To be honest with you, I think it's just the record labels and everyone is independent. But I do notice that there is a lot of people who sit here and make false claims of the Illuminati. So I think that that's what I've noticed more. I know that there is a talk of the Illuminati, but 9 times out of 10 is people falsifying that they are in the Illuminati to kind of get clout, look cool, or be part of like that fear factor. Like you were saying, like that fear factor. Oh, fear me.
For shock value. Like for shock value is what you're saying.
Shock value, right. But they're not really part of that. So let's say out of 10 people, maybe 3 of them, there is some type of association of something of that. But is it believable to the masses or to people like me, like the general public? I think that that a lot of people are like me, like they know that word exists, but they don't think that truly exists.
And I definitely agree. I believe that most average Americans believe it's a myth. It isn't true, but I also believe that most average Americans just don't look into it enough or seem to care enough because it's entertainment. So since it's entertainment, it's meant to entertain. But even if you listen to the word entertain, it sounds very close to tame you, to like keep you pacified. So when people are listening to the music, they know they don't want to go into the deep end or figure out what the music is even representing. Most people don't even listen to the lyrics. They're listening to the beat, and that's enough for them. That's what they're listening to the music for entertainment.
Yeah.
But in reality, shock value, it can't even be for shock value, because when you mention shock value, it means that people have to be shocked from you doing this, right? But you see, you just said right now that most Americans see it and they don't even care because they don't even believe in it. So it doesn't have any shock value. And it isn't something that hasn't been going on, that just started happening in the 2000s, in the late 2010s. The satanic influence and this sort of imagery has been going on since 70s, 60s. Even stories of Robert Johnson, he apparently sold his soul, and the story goes, on the crossroad. I don't think it could be for shock value because no one's shocked anymore. And like I said, it's been going on since the 60s, 70s, all the way until today. And it's not just in hip hop, it's in pop, it's in reggaeton, Latin trap, it's in rock and roll, it's in all forms of music. And specifically, when we know the story of Lucifer in the Bible, even though Lucifer is not specifically stated to be the angel of music, most people have attributed certain verses from the Bible to indicate that he was the head choir, the head of the music, So to see all this satanic influence, all this imagery, it can't be for shock value. It seems more like praise. It seems more like giving their gratification for this deity that somehow helped them achieve the success. Let me ask you this question. Do you think this world is at any way affected by the spiritual world? Or do you think that it's two separate worlds that have nothing to do with each other?
That's a really good question. There is a spiritual world. I do believe that there is a spiritual world. Do they affect us in any way? No, I think it's separate. I think that when your spirit, leaves you, it goes on to another journey. We all This flesh and this blood and this bone is a vehicle, and our souls are the drivers. The brain is basically, where our soul is living, within us. And when we die, our soul leaves this body. Everything stays behind, and our soul moves on. Where it goes, I don't know. There's been talks of so many things, and let's be honest, we're in 2025, the most advanced era in the world ever existed. And not in today's world, a lot of people try to explain things. So that's pretty much my view on it.
Yeah, and I basically agree with everything you're saying to a certain extent. I do believe that our soul is what lives forever. We can, there's proof of that in the Bible. There's also even scientific proof, and to some extent. But I also do believe that the spiritual world can be tapped into. I definitely believe, because specifically, I personally have bought in so many books of very important, prominent people that they are occultists. And for example, like I mentioned before, Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons is responsible for creating the rocket fuel and the rocket engine that sent the first ship to outer space. And he was exposed for being an occultist. Everything that I'm saying, you can literally Google and you can see it on Wikipedia. He was an occultist who was a sex magician who used to do rituals with Aleister Crowley. And he literally said that the way that he got his technology was through tapping into the spiritual world through rituals. Wow. Same thing with...
How far back was that?
This was in the 50s, 40s, wow. 1940s, 1950s. Not that long ago. I think he died in the 40s or in the 50s. He blew himself up. He was working on an experiment. Some people think they took him out. But this guy was even connected to the military, because the military were the ones that were, the ones that were financing his experiments. And, they recruited him to work for the military. And they thought he was a spy because he was connected to Aleister Crowley, and they thought Aleister Crowley was a spy. But it turned out that he wasn't a spy, and they actually approved his working. They even paid for a facility where he did all his experiments. And it turned out that he was an occultist. And you can Google this right now, and you can see that nothing that I'm saying is a lie. And it's not just Jack Parsons. So many inventors. But today's episode is about the music industry. So we're going to stick and focus on the music industry.
Yeah, no, listen, it's so interesting, this stuff, this believer, non-believer stuff we can sit here and talk forever on this stuff, because there's so many people involved, and you have so much knowledge of this stuff that we can easily stray away. But yeah, let's stick to the stuff. But don't trash none of this stuff, because I think this is really good stuff.
No, of course we're gonna keep this. Yeah. Now, when it comes to artists, what I want to ask you is, so you think that all of the satanic imagery is strictly for shock value?
When it comes to artists, there is a message. Obviously, artists do, they make music for the masses. So I believe that there is always a message behind it, whether it's a love message, whether, they're talking about breakup, or whether there's hidden subliminal messages. There was a lot of stuff that went on in the last Olympics that I didn't agree with, that I think had subliminal messages. That's why it sparked an interest in me to find out more about this information.
Yeah, it's a hidden agenda. Yeah. In reality, that's all it is.
But it doesn't look so hidden anymore.
But no, it is hidden, because it's slowly being unveiled. It's not something that they just pulled the curtains on one day to the next. This is something that has been going on for years. Slowly but surely, they're implementing this agenda on the world, and they're using the entertainment industry to do so. Little by little.
The rappers and doing on this agenda. How would you're saying that this started when this agenda,
this agenda has been a part of the country since the very beginning. They have just been, for example, if we can take it back to,
you said when NWA started, it was, NWA wasn't part of the agenda, or was?
No, definitely. We spoke about that off the record, but we will definitely get into that in a second. But it's before, it goes way further before NWA. NWA was a move. It was the next step in their agenda. Each agenda has basically generations. It's like Generation Alpha, generation, the millennials, the Gen X. All these generations, they had specific agendas that were pushed onto them. Now that's why if you look at today is Generation Alpha. Alpha is the A letter of the alphabet. It's the first, the Alpha and the Omega. Omega is the last. So they're letting us know that this is the first generation of their new world. You understand? The generation that is literally completely manipulated by the agenda that's been pushed by the music industry, Hollywood, entertainment, even society in every single way. If we look at it, for example, recently, I know you've noticed a lot of rappers coming out to be playing with their sexuality. Like they might play as they're leaning to being gay or being gender fluid and things like that.
Right, or being okay with, doing certain things that are female, oriented.
Exactly. Something that if it would have happened in the hip hop scene in the 2000s, you would have been laughed at. Right. But little by little, they implemented this agenda. The clothes got tighter from being baggy. After the clothes got tighter, the rapper started wearing colorful hair. The rapper started little by little painting their nails, to the point where now there's open gay rappers like Lil Nas X, to the point where there's rappers that you don't know if they're gay or not, like Playboi Carti. And it's all about gender neutrality, because like I've explained multiple times before, the people that run this country, they have an agenda. They have an agenda to make you like them so that they can create a perfect world in their image, in their ideas. And their idea...
Sorry about that. But speaking of Playboi Carti, it's crazy how Playboi Carti has such a hit record right now. And you're talking about that he's... Why are people accepting that in the hip hop world today? And it's because of that, right?
It's because it was little by little. When Playboi Carti came out, he didn't look nothing like this. His first song was Magnolia. His song, he was dressed like a regular street guy. He was in New York. He was pushing the same thug, gangster, a little bit of a hipster type of vibe. The SoundCloud era, because that's when he came up. He came up in the SoundCloud era with rappers like Lil Uzi Vert, Kodak Black, all of these rappers that were already pushing that agenda. They were already little by little. It started before them. Believe it or not, it started with like Kanye West.
Yeah. Kanye West?
Yeah, with Kanye West. Kanye West started to add feelings, started to add emotions to hip hop. And he would wear the pink shirt. He would, wear the book. He was softening it a little. You understand? Right. Because everything has to be done little by little. If it's done with a direct change, it changes. It spooks off the people.
Right, it gets rejected, yeah.
Exactly. So it has to be implemented slowly. For example, if we look at Latin America with the Latin trap scene, they first made Bad Bunny the biggest artist in the world before they started to dress him like a girl, before they had him kissing men, before they had him pushing this open agenda. And that's not a coincidence. When Bad Bunny walked in the industry, he was still real Bad Bunny, him, who he wanted to be. Right. But then if you want to make it to certain levels, want to make it to certain rooms, you got to be down with certain activities. And the higher you get, the more you're getting pulled into this world of the occult, where, like I said, Alex Galgola praised Bad Bunny for dressing like Baphomet in one of his magazine shoots. He was literally praising him for it because, like I've explained, Alex Galgola is an open Freemason. He doesn't hide it. Bad Bunny, in my eyes, is most definitely been recruited by the Masons, and he's most definitely a Mason in today's world.
And I think that, he painted a picture when, there was some media out that said that he had a amazing split on his record deal. Like he had his own control over his own.
Yeah, they were saying it was a 90-10 split.
Right. So that gave people the impression that Bad Bunny had freedom over his music and that he wasn't going to be controlled to come out with music that was narrated. Right. So I think that pushed him to a higher level when everybody thought of Bad Bunny and this amazing deal that he has control of his own music. But then we saw all that stuff happen, him kissing, another guy, and then, pushing that agenda, wearing the skirts, and all that stuff. And then, just, being dressing up like a girl. He had a whole entire video where he dressed up as a woman.
And in that same video, he's chained to women dressed like demons. You remember?
Women dressed like demons.
Yeah, in that same video, he's chained. He's wearing like a skirt thing. He's like dancing all around while there's chains connected to him.
Oh, yeah.
It's in the same video. And you think that's a coincidence? Now, let me ask you this. You see that and you think the artists want to do that themselves? You think Bad Bunny said, I want to dress like a woman?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I don't think that, I wouldn't see why he would want to, unless he had, some belief in it himself, or he thought, it was his creative idea. Again, we're over here thinking that he has, control of his, the general public like myself that sees most.
But you know the music industry a bit.
Yeah, I do.
That has nothing to, the 90-10 split means that it was a revenue split. It's not a control split, and it's not like it forbids them from having handlers. At a level like Bad Bunny, he's influencing millions, tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of millions of people. You think they're gonna let that influence be free?
Right.
Everything that's mass appealing, that reaches the masses, has to be narrated, has to be controlled, because they're not gonna let a regular person have all this influence. They don't know what you're gonna influence someone to do. You can influence them to rebel against the government. You can influence them to rebel against the leading establishment. So they don't want that. They gotta make sure that they always have control. Now, giving him a 90-10 split, what that was really about was leverage. Every single record label wanted him at the moment. His deal was coming to an end. And the record label that offered him the best deal was obviously the one that was gonna get him. But just as much as I know, all of these record labels are connected. UMG owns like 40 or 50% of every independent label. Sony owns the other 30%, and then Warner owns the other 20. There is no independent record labels. They're all under UMG, Sony, and Warner Music, major record labels. I know the music industry in and out. And like you were signed to
a record deal.
Yeah, explain your record deal when you first signed.
Well, my record deal was a 5-year deal. I mean, I was signed to a Latin label, but they had a lot of control over me too, because they were spending money on me. They wanted me to move to a certain city. I had to move to New York, and then they paid, obviously they paid the radio stations to play my music. It was kind of like that. So basically what happened with my record deal was that they expected me to perform a certain way and to act a certain way and do certain things, and I didn't do it. So after a year where they saw I was uncontrollable, they dropped me. So,
and that's my point.
Yeah.
So if you saw that on the lower level, you were a aspiring artist who got a break and you were on the way to success. Now, do you think that if you would have played ball, you would have done everything they said? Don't you think you would have probably stuck around and they would have probably introduced you to a bigger label and then a bigger label and then eventually you're Bad Bunny? You understand my point?
Absolutely.
Now,
and I get that. I tried to keep my deal going after another year, because I wanted to keep making music. But they saw that basically I wasn't willing to jump through all the hoops that they wanted me to jump through. So,
and that's my point. That's implemented on all levels. On the lower level, they're trying to see who's gonna play ball. Who's down to do as I say and be a perfect little puppet. And if they're good and talented and they're a perfect little puppet, then we have a good one. But if you're rebelling and you're not trying to wear a dress, I'm not saying that happened with you because this was back in the day. But if you're rebelling and not trying to wear a dress or trying to do certain things, you get kicked out.
Yeah, you lose.
Now, do you think like rappers like Jay-Z, you don't believe like a rapper like Jay-Z is a part of the Freemasons?
Again, the Freemasons, if you're saying that they're embedded in culture, I think that someone that gets at that level has to eventually affiliate themselves with the higher ups in order to, continue growing. If Jay-Z wanted to, let's say, eventually drop out back in the 2000s, when he had his first, 2, 3 hits, and then he didn't want to keep going, I think that eventually he would have not gotten to those, higher up doors. And when you're dealing with those level of people who are making that much money, I mean, it's a different ballgame. So, did he, meet up with those guys? Probably he's associated with them. But, I don't really know enough about that culture to know that. I know that he owns Rockefeller, and I know that he signed when he was with Dame Dash, he split ways with Dame Dash, and he was a CEO after a while. But and I know that he does a symbol that a lot of people have, online, associated with Illuminati.
The Rock Nation symbol. That was my next point.
Right.
So yeah, first of all, I just want to make this point. The Freemasons, you don't just join when you're at the top of the world. There's regular people that join the Masons every single day. All you have to do to join the Masons is literally be a member has to offer you to join. And then you're supposed to ask the member, and then the member brings you to the lodge, and then they vote you in, right? And then you got to go through the first 3-degree rituals. That's how you become a Mason. Most Masons join at the low, from nothing. And then it helps them. That's the reason most people even join. Because when you join, you get to a certain enough level within the organization. Other people at the same level as you have to give you favors, have to do certain things for you. So if you're trying to get into the best school, or let's say you joined the Freemasons at 21, and by 22, you're already in the 30th degree, rise to the Scottish Rite. You apply for a certain college and you let them know you're Masons in your application. Chances are you're going to get picked over another person. You understand? Right. Chances are that if you're applying for this nice job, a Wall Street job, and at this location where you're at the same lodge as the Grand Master of the organization is your boss. Obviously, you're going to get favors within the business and you're going to grow faster, So it starts at a lower level. Everyone joins first 2-3 degrees. Only certain people get nominated in without having to do all that legwork. What would you say about that?
I mean, I think that everybody that wants to be, part of an organization and they want to level up, they have to join something, right? Like when you go to college, you got to join a fraternity in order to, be part of certain ideals that you want to become. So let's say you want to be a surgeon, some type of surgeon in a city that has a fraternity in that college you go to. You're going to make sure you join them, and then you're going to believe in their culture. You see that in a lot of movies sometimes too, where they do these fraternities and they make them go through all that stuff. I think in hip hop you see a lot of that too. You see these guys join, and yeah, you're right. A lot of these guys do rock the triangle chains. A lot of these guys do claim Illuminati, but are they all really in the Illuminati?
The pyramid, I understand someone using that as I'm gonna show that I'm a Illuminati, a little bit mystique, because that's what people think. But the squaring compasses, a symbol that 90% of America might not even know what it means. 90% of them, you show most people, if you go to your wife right now and you showed your wife the symbol of the Freemasons, she's not gonna know what that is. She's not gonna tell you Illuminati or anything. She's not gonna know what it is at all. No one is gonna know.
Square a compass, yeah.
Yeah, they're not gonna know what it is, and that's the reason what I'm saying. What's the purpose of this rapper wearing this Freemason symbol if most people don't even know what it is? Only a small group of people that either are a part of the organization or they know of the organization are the only ones that are gonna know he's wearing this. You understand? It can't be for shock value, because most of the public they would see that and not know. For example, at the WWE WrestleMania, one of the WrestleManias that passed, right? A country artist, he came on there with a huge Mason chain, and he wore it publicly. The whole crowd, no one even pointed it out, because to them, they don't know what it means. It's a symbol that's only understood by other members. So again, why would this 15, 16-year-old have a Freemason chain on when he's not even legally allowed to be a Mason by Mason law? Mason law indicates that in most states, in the United States, a person has to be 21. Now, like I did say, you can join the Mason Demolay organization, which is a youth program for kids to train them to be Masons when they're older.
These rappers, do they volunteer to become Masons, or like let's say you come from where Jay-Z came and you wanna be a rapper too. Like, how's it work?
When Jay-Z, like a Jay-Z or something, he joins the Masons, right? He lets it be known in the lodge, I want to be an artist, right? Now there's an entertainment lodge. There's a literal Freemason lodge, like in Hollywood. That's the Hollywood lodge. So all the actors would go there, network with each other. I'm doing this movie. I can get you a role in this movie. Do you understand?
Right.
In the music industry, it's the entertainment lodge that they go to, where the executives are part of the lodge. See this young Mason who's talented or has the look, and then they offer them an opportunity. Or it could also work the other way. You become famous, you become an artist, you have a hit song, they sign you, they start taking you to certain events, they start taking you to certain places. And when you're about to hit that peak, they tell you, look, the people that we work with, the people that are gonna hit that button on you and send you to the sky, they would prefer if you're a part of the same group that they're a part of. They would feel more comfortable giving you that extra push if you were pushing, if you were with the same ideas as them. So then they go take them and they join the Freemasons and they go through all the degrees and boom, you see it openly.
I honestly think that, like you said, a lot of people see this stuff, but they don't associate, they don't put the two together, and I think that if that were the case, would these people still be as famous as they are? Would they be getting all those views if people truly understood that? Because you could tell me today, hey, he was in that Mason lodge, he was wearing this, I would have never noticed.
You would have never noticed, but then you listen to the music, right?
Right, you listen to the music.
And the music is literally shaping you, rewiring your brain, rewiring the way you think. Can you answer this? Do you think music has influenced you in any way since your childhood to today?
Absolutely. I think music influences the entire planet. I mean, absolutely. That's
exactly why they use it.
We have emotions towards vibrations, and like when sound feels good to us, we basically lower our barriers and we become, submissive.
Docile.
Yeah, docile. I get that. And then, and then there's always an easy way to slip a message through when you're in that position. You get what I'm saying? So
yeah.
I truly, the thing is that, it's all subliminal. So,
well, it was at a certain point.
Yeah.
Now it's pretty much in the open.
Yeah. But even now that it's in the open, people, like you said, it's so normalized now that now it's out in the open and people are okay with it.
Exactly, but that's my point.
But I don't think people understand what they're okay with.
They don't, because that's what I'm trying to say. For example, the excessive aggressive push for hip hop turning into, more gender neutrality, more of these rappers, like we said, changing the way they dress. They call it freedom, right? They call it progression. America's progressing and we're accepting more and we're putting back hate and all this stuff. But in the occult, it's just called alchemy. It's literally called, transcending and becoming enlightened, becoming a god. That's what it's seen as, an alchemy.
Yeah.
But they're not going to tell you this because most people don't believe in any of it and they don't understand. That's why the Masons call the general public the profane. They don't think they're smart enough to understand any of the stuff that they deal with. And when I want you to do your homework, all of you listening as well, just look at how many powerful people have been open Freemasons. Not that doesn't mean that these are the only ones. These are the ones that had no issues admitting, and they do this because you want to have powerful people in Masonry that are public so that you can attract more members. It's the same thing that the Church of Scientology does. The Church of Scientology has members like people like Tom Cruise be open about their affiliation with the Church of Scientology. They're doing that to bring people in because these are influencers. They're influential. Influence means that you idolize them and they have a form of control over you. They can sway you. That's why these people are used for commercials. That's why they're used to sell clothes. They use them because you want to be like them. And since you want to be like them, they know that they can get you to do whatever they want through them. And it's the same thing. It's the reason why they built these people. These aren't normal people. These aren't people that are doing what they want. There's a whole team behind them that is picking out every move strategically. Everything that they're wearing, everything that they're saying is strategically orchestrated to make sure they pushed the exact agenda needed, you know?
Yeah.
All of these things were a part of the agenda. Little by little, this agenda has been unraveling. Little by little, they have been changing us. Little by little, they have been confusing us. They have been trying to convince us to be a certain way. Like we spoke about Bad Bunny, he did the same exact thing. Like we spoke about Little Uzi Vert, the same thing. Playboy Cardi, the same thing.
It's
A$AP
very
Rocky,
slow.
Drake.
Very slow effect that is so slow that by the time it's done, everybody's gonna be okay with it. And
Exactly. They see it more like, this is what my favorite rapper's doing. It must be okay. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And you see all this and you still don't think you see all this and you still don't think that there's an organization that's ruling over this entertainment industry to try to push this onto the masses? Remember, they're all signing record deals.
Yeah, I believe that there is a massive agenda behind all of it. So is it the Masons' agenda being fulfilled through the music industry? Those are things that you've pointed out a lot of good things that I've seen myself in mainstream media right now. And to say that the Masons are tied to all of them, I'd like to see more of the story put together, and I definitely see all this, that you're talking about, Truth. And let me tell you, it's shocking to me that it's in plain sight and a lot of people don't understand it. I mean, it's kind of sad to me as well that we've gotten to this point where it's so normalized that we don't feel the effects because it's been so long. It's been back since Biggie.
Yeah, from even before then. In the whole the 60s, 70s rock era, most of those rock stars were wearing women's clothing the whole time.
Yeah.
And they were straight up Satanists. They were literally screaming that they worship Satan in every song. And people just saw it as shock value back then. But how could it still be shock value 40 years later, 50 years later, So it's not shock value anymore. It's a clear agenda. And there's a lot of artists like David Bowie. David Bowie has songs where he confesses to being an occultist, where he admits that he's a follower of Aleister Crowley and he's a part of his organization. He said this out of his own mouth. And if you look at his music, one of his last music videos, Black Star, you watch that music video and you tell me there wasn't something evil attached to it. The whole thing is about a demon coming to collect his soul because he knew he was going to die. David Bowie died not that long after that music video. And he was telling us that he was going to die, but he was telling us that his soul, his teachings, everything, the eternal flame was going to continue to live because these are all occult principalities. So David Bowie was open about his Masonic connection. I presented enough evidence that at least suggests that there's an agenda being pushed by the higher-ups of the music industry. Now, I believe they're Freemasons, and I explained to you in the last episode why. But what do you think? Do you still think it's shock value or just a coincidence? Or do you think that the whole music industry is moving unitedly to push this agenda?
Well, Truth, I might have to agree with you on this one, on some parts of it. I'm not going to agree with all of it, but I'm definitely going to agree with the fact that there is a unified agenda, just because we're seeing it played across many different artists.
But I'm going to end this one here. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to What's the Word. That's Tradell's channel. You guys can go over there, check it out. He drops content weekly. And we'll see you guys in the next episode next week. I want to thank you all, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Peace.